প্রিয় দর্শক, দেশে বিদেশে টিভি চ্যানেলের পক্ষ থেকে সবাইকে প্রীতি ও শুভেচ্ছা। আশা করি যে যেখানে আছেন আপনারা ভালো আছেন এবং সুস্থ আছেন। আজ আমাদের এখানে অতিথি হয়ে এসেছেন টরন্টো নগরীর নগরপিতা জন টরি। জন টরিকে আমরা স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি।
Hello everyone, I want to welcome all our viewers to DesheBideshe TV, Canada's first 24-hour Bengali TV channel. I want to start by thanking Mr. Nazrul Mintu, the CEO and Chief Editor of DesheBideshe TV, for putting on the special segment today. And on today's show, we have a very special guest today, and that is none other than the Mayor of our city of Toronto, Mayor John Tory. It's a pleasure to have you on DesheBideshe TV. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, Mayor Tory, I want to start by, on behalf of our viewership, which the majority of which is Bangladeshi and Muslim here in Toronto, I really want to start by thanking you and the city for making a special exemption to allow the Adhan, the Muslim call to prayer, to be broadcast at sunset in the month of Ramadan. It means a great deal to our community, obviously in a difficult Ramadan. But unfortunately, during this time, we've also seen certain groups or certain individuals, very isolated incidents, where people have written some things which we would describe as Islamophobic. And potentially inciting hatred against members of the Muslim faith. You being the mayor of the most diverse city in the world, what would you say to people of the Muslim faith at a time like this? And also to the folks that are, the isolated folks that are saying these kind of things that are Islamophobic?
I'm sorry, there's tremendous audio problems. I hope you can hear me better than I can hear you, but I got the gist of the question, and I will just say this for starters. First of all, I say all the time, and I repeat today, there is no place in our city for people who are engaging in hatred or discrimination or any kind of commentary that singles out any group by way of religion or by way of skin color or nationality for that kind of unacceptable commentary. Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Black racism. These are just things we don't accept in our city, and I won't accept it, and I speak up every time I see it. In the case of the call to prayer, I'm proud of the fact that we have said that is something that's a part of the fabric of life in our city. I say quite often, we've had for centuries here in Canada church bells that ring on Sunday morning, and they make a noise, and it's a noise for a brief period of time. Nobody ever complains about that, as far as I know, the church bells ringing. What's the difference? This is people being called to prayer, and it is the same thing, and it is not for a long period of time, and it is that loud. I mean, if it was something that literally caused everybody's windows to shake and their house to fall down, I'd say, well, we should do something about that. But it isn't. And so I think that a change is something that we have to get used to in the city. I think the number of people who are not adjusting well to that change and who are saying things about this are a tiny, tiny, tiny number of people. I think the vast majority of people welcome the fact that we welcome people of all faiths, that I'm delighted that, and I should say Ramadan Mubarak to people, by the way, but I'm delighted this is a small way in which we can acknowledge that so many people in our city are celebrating a very important in their faith, and that for the short period of time that it represents, and the short period of time that the call to prayer is happening, it's something to me that's a great thing for the city. Not, I think, there's always going to be somebody complaining about everything, and I think that I have to keep my eye on commentary that verges onto discrimination and hatred. But in the meantime, faith and people in the Bengali community in particular, a wonderful community contributing so much to our well-being, to know this is the tiniest minority of people. You probably count them on two hands. Everybody else is delighted that it's Ramadan, delighted to have a thriving Muslim faith here who contribute a lot to the community, and who I think in some respects their faith is misunderstood. But that's up to all of us to continue the job of educating as to all the great things that go on, for example, during Ramadan time. I've seen it myself at the iftar dinners I've gone to and so on, the charities that are supported, the acts of goodwill that are done to build up a stronger community, not just for Muslims, but for everybody. So please don't concern yourself unduly with these tiny group of people. I am going to try to keep an eye and be vigilant about them, but understand most of the people of Toronto are most welcoming of this very special occasion on your faith calendar.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. That's a very encouraging message for our viewers, and I'd expect that everyone appreciates that message. And with that, I want to move on to another topic that that everyone has on their minds, which is none other than COVID-19 and our city moving closer to a phased reopening. We've been hearing some talk from neighboring mayors in Mississauga and Brampton suggesting that we may be reopening too soon. As the mayor of Toronto, what are your thoughts? Do you feel that we may be reopening too soon, or do you feel that we're on track with the phased reopening?
I don't think so overall. I think we're on track. Let me just say this by way of a cautionary comment, because what I do agree with my fellow GTA mayors on, and with the medical officers of health, perhaps more importantly, because they are the experts, is that Toronto and the Toronto region are different. For example, I was hearing yesterday that the city of St. Thomas down near London has 4 cases of COVID-19. The city of Kingston, just to the east of us, has none, 0. And that's wonderful for them. I mean, they're so fortunate not to have any. But here in the GTA, we still have a lot of cases, new ones being reported. And we've had, of course, thousands of cases and hundreds of deaths, I regret to say. And so all we're saying, all of us, isn't so much with regard to phase 1, which officially starts this coming Tuesday, but rather with regard to phase 2, which is going to be a much broader opening of various things, in our city and in our region. Please, let's take very great care together to look at all of those numbers and look at the circumstances through a GTA, a Toronto lens, as well as just looking at the province as a whole. Because there is no question but that things are different here. We were harder hit. We tragically lost many more lives here. A lot of the people that are affected are people from marginalized communities, poorer people. And we just have to make sure that whatever happens, as much as we want to get the economy going and get people back to work and get the kids able to do more activities and so on, that we do it carefully, because I think we'll be very, very sorry. I know we will, if we do this too fast in the Toronto area, for example, and then end up in another shutdown come September or something like that. I think people will be very angry with the public officials if they've allowed that to happen. And so we're saying that I think the phase 1, stage 1 reopening that's happening Tuesday with golf clubs and marinas and some stores and some kinds of services you can get, probably if we handle it correctly, it'll be okay. But the phase 2, which is to have many, many more stores and big employers and, possibly restaurants and bars,
right,
comes to pass, we have to be very careful about that. That's all we're saying. And I think one more point. When we do that, we should do it pursuant to very carefully understood criteria, so that everybody out there, all of your viewers, me, you, we all understand what was the measurement. Did we meet that measurement? That's why we moved to phase 2, because the government said from the beginning they would only go from one phase to the next, 1 to 2 to 3, correct, as the statistics justified. And I think we have to make sure that in Toronto and elsewhere that the statistics justify moving from one phase to the next, so that we can be sure people above all are healthy and safe.
Correct. Thank you. And as we move towards that phase 2, and if the downward trend continues, when we do get to a phase 2, would the city consider issuing potentially a bylaw making masks mandatory when out in public?
I'm sorry, I've missed the question. You've frozen up to, I heard you say as we move from phase 2 to phase 3, and then it broke up and I couldn't hear you anymore. You could try one more time.
No problem. As we move from phase 1 to phase 2 eventually, would the city look at potentially making masks mandatory while out in public?
That's a very big question we've talked about almost every day. First of all, people should understand, as has been explained to me, because I didn't understand all this, I'm not a doctor, that when you wear a mask, you are only protecting other people from you spreading the virus. The mask doesn't work the other way, so that if somebody is coughing or sneezing on you, the fact is that the virus can find its way through your eyes, through you touching your face, through your nose. Maybe if your nose and mouth are covered, but even if you have the virus goes on your hand, and then later on after you take the mask off, you touch your eye, you can get the virus. So the virus provides protection against you giving the virus to other people through the water droplets in your mouth. So it doesn't mean wearing a mask isn't a good idea. We're saying as of now that if you think there's some danger in you not being able to stay 2 meters, 6 feet away from somebody else, whether it's on transit, in a store, or anywhere else, then you should wear a mask, because what that does is it stops you from giving the virus to them. If they're wearing a mask, it stops them pretty much, or helps to stop them from giving the virus to you. I think we're certainly going to be strengthening that recommendation as people start to ride the transit again and go into places where there are bigger crowds of people, where you just can't help that, even at an intersection at the city, or walking on the sidewalk and things like that, or in a workplace, in a lineup for an elevator to go back to work. So I think you're going to find recommendation to wear a mask is strengthened. Does it ever get to an order? I doubt it, frankly, because I think in a society like ours, we often don't, act that way in the context of giving people orders about doing things like that. The question of how you would enforce that order becomes very difficult, and the question of where people would get masks from is all, complex questions. So I think we're already at the stage where the medical officer of health has said to people, if you can't keep physical distance from others, 2 meters, wear a mask. And I think you'll find the strength of that recommendation will increase as we go further and have the transit getting more used and that kind of thing. But will we ever get to an order? I'm not sure we will. But it's not my decision. It's the medical officer of health who makes that decision based on health considerations as opposed to anything else.
Right. And that makes perfect sense. We should be listening to the experts, and I think we're definitely, that leadership is going to get us to the place where we need to get. Now, one of the aims of reopening is to have an economic recovery. Now, there seems to be two schools of thought. On the one hand, we have a group saying, we may have a prolonged recession that's worse than anything else we've ever seen. There's the other side that says, well, this isn't your typical recession, because a city like Toronto has very strong economic fundamentals. And once we can take care of the health side of this pandemic, our economy should recover relatively quick. And I want to ask you a question on this, is that Sidewalk Labs, announced that they were going to move away from the waterfront project. Do you see this pandemic in any way causing an issue in terms of attracting future investment into the city?
No, I'll tell you why. I mean, we've had our problems here, and I think that when that Sidewalk Labs Google Alphabet decision was announced and they said it was because of the pandemic, I think what it caused is a lot of corporations had to review all of their investments happening anywhere, because maybe they didn't have the same, money to do all the things they were doing before, because all companies, even the biggest ones, have been hit hard by this. But, I think you ask yourself this question right now about investment in Toronto. If you were a person sitting in any country you want to name, Germany or in Lebanon, and you had money and you were going to invest, or you were even going to take a job in the following three places that are world cities that people look at: London, New York, Toronto, which one would you pick? And I think that if right now that question was put to a lot of people, we wouldn't get every single one of those investments or every one of those smart people who want to move to another city, but I think we'd get a lot of them, because I think people understand the fundamentals of the Toronto economy: smart people, embracing of diversity, quality of life that is good, natural environment, proximity to the U.S. market, good solid base of financial institutions and life sciences and all those kinds of things that, a lot of good universities. I think people would come here. But I think if you add to that how we've come through the pandemic, how we've come through COVID-19, I think people would say, here compared to, say, London or New York, and I'm not being critical of them, I'm just saying that if you look at the situation, they would say Toronto is more stable. Toronto has come through the pandemic better. Toronto is, financially stable, even though we have some problems at the moment that I think we're going to get some help from the other governments on. And all the things that made us a city that was one of the most 10 livable in the world, that was one of the top 10 financial centers in the world, a top 3 tech hub in North America, a top center for film production and for culture. The list goes on. How could it be that Toronto, our Toronto, which isn't one of the biggest cities in the world, it's a 3 million person city, was in the top 10 of all the cities in the world? And I think all of the fundamentals that led to that ranking, done by other people, not by us, all those fundamentals are still there. So that I think while there'll be some adjustment going through the recovery, I think relatively get back to being a tech powerhouse. We'll get back to being a film and television powerhouse. We'll always be, and still are, a financial powerhouse. and that a lot of people will get back to work. The ones that are going to be hardest to get back to work are people like artists and people like that, because they do their things on their own and they rely on other people to buy things from them or attend their concerts and so on. Concerts will be a hard thing for musicians because there aren't going to be probably places where you can go and sit with 500 or 600 other people for some time. But I think otherwise the fundamental building blocks of our economy are going to get back going faster. And I think if you combine that with our image, which is one where I would say, if you ask me, 8 out of 10 people confronting a choice of a job in Toronto, London, New York would take the one in Toronto, because I think we've got a lot going for us right now. So I'm very optimistic. It's my job to be optimistic as the mayor, but I'm optimistic as well because I think the facts are on our side.
Right. Right. And 2 quick follow-up questions on that. One thing that to me personally shows that, Toronto is still very attractive is when we hear that the NHL and NBA are reopening. Toronto is floated as a potential destination. And I want to get your take on that, but let me just ask the second question as well, because they kind of go hand in hand. Concerts, you're right, won't be happening anytime soon. But I saw earlier this week, we saw that the Toronto Zoo is now innovating, and they're going to a drive-in model where you can drive through the zoo. Would we look at potentially? I live in Scarborough. We're based out of Scarborough. Allowing the parking lot at the bottom of the bluffs to be used for potentially drive-in movies or drive-in concerts?
It's such a good question, and I will just tell you, we were talking about it yesterday at the City Hall, and the reason we were talking about it is because TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, is looking at a modified way in which they could still put on a festival in September. And one of the ideas they had, because there is no question that an outdoor setting, still with proper physical distancing, is less dangerous in terms of the virus than an indoor setting, because the virus disperses in the air. And so they were looking, TIFF was, at having half a dozen or more big public screenings, including, say, at Nathan Phillips Square in Toronto. Then I got word that there was somebody that was going to put on a concert on the same basis, that you came to the concert in your car, that you could use the technology that's in most cars now with much more sophisticated radios. I mean, it used to be just get AM and FM. Now, through Bluetooth and so on, you could probably pick up a pretty good quality sound of a concert broadcast from a venue. So the challenge only becomes to find a place big enough to hold enough cars to make the concert worth it financially. I will only say to you, there's no reason at all why we couldn't have a drive-in concert, or for that matter, a drive-in be at a film festival or otherwise. And so all of those things are on the table. What really is required is not so much city permits, which I think will be pretty easy to get for that sort of thing, but the ingenuity of some people out there in the private sector and in the festival world who want to put these things on and, work out all the details that are involved in having a concert. We were even talking about where you could do it. You could do it at the Canadian National Exhibition, for example, down by the lakeshore. There's huge parking lots there. You could do it at the malls. Some of the big malls like Yorkdale have gigantic parking lots. So, depending on how far back you are willing to be from the stage or from the screen, there are ways in which you could do this. And so we're talking about it as something that might be kind of fun, above and beyond. You're too young to remember, but when I was a kid, you'd go to the drive-in movie and it was a great adventure, because you'd be there in your car and it seemed kind of neat to be watching a movie in the car, but it worked great. And you hung the speaker inside the window of the car, and the sound came through there, and you watched the picture, of course, through the windshield. It only became a problem if it was raining, and that was a bit of a problem. But having said that, these are things that I think we may have to adjust to in the next few months while we get the virus, fully looked after and move on to something different, but so that we don't deny ourselves in the meantime the music and the movies that we want to see.
I think that's something that, it wasn't around 30 years ago when it happened, but I think a lot of us would look forward to something like that now. I wanted to ask you, before I ask any more questions, Mayor Tory, how are we doing in terms of time?
Sorry, I just missed how you were going to ask something else before the next question. Just repeat.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask before the next question, how are we doing in terms of time? Are you okay for time, Mayor Tory?
Oh, I'm going off to visit one of the cities. I've got another 7 or 8 minutes, so we're okay there.
Okay, great. Thank you. A question I wanted to ask you that some of our viewers have been asking is as the landlord-tenant board eventually reopens, does the city, we have a city where we do have a lot of tenants, and not all the tenants live in big under corporate landlords. Some live in with private landlords in basement rentals or private house rentals. Do you see an influx of potential issues at the LTB for tenants or even some of these private landlords, and how, what are the issues that you foresee here, and how do we maybe get past them, or how do we, stop ourselves from getting there and maybe deal with them now?
I would suggest, frankly, that the province should start looking now. What they did, and it was a good thing to do, and it was the right thing to do, and I only think they should have done it as well for commercial tenants who are like shops and restaurants in commercial landlord premises, is banned evictions for commercial tenants too, so that those shops would know they would be able to carry on business even if they were unable to pay all of the rent. I know that landlords have obligations as well, but I think it would have forced landlords to make a deal with their tenant, during the period of the emergency and perhaps a bit beyond. And the kind of deal I'm talking about is a deal where if you missed paying the rent on the 1st of June, they just take that money and spread it out over the next 18 months of the lease time, work together. What often is, if you kick the tenant out now, a commercial tenant, who's going to rent your store? There's a lot of empty stores up and down the streets right now. Why are they going to come to your store and rent it? And you kick the tenant out, so you have no tenant left, and there's nobody that's renting your property. When it comes to residential tenants, I almost believe that maybe the answer is that they should take the ban that they put on evictions and extend it. So it isn't just, right now it's just for the period of the emergency. So when they lift the emergency order, theoretically, the ban on evictions goes away. And what we can't afford to have happen in an environment of a lot of shortage of rental accommodation is to have a whole bunch of people who effectively go out on the street after this emergency is over, because a lot of them will have lost their jobs and lost their ability to pay their rent at least as quickly as normally. So one of the things they're going to have to look at is they can't just get off one day and suddenly have a whole bunch of people out on the street. I think they're going to have to take a look at extending that period of banning of evictions for a lengthier period of time while people adjust to getting back to work, and the landlords make some kind of arrangement perhaps to redo the lease a little bit to stretch out the payments or something. But I just think it won't be necessarily practical or acceptable to have a whole bunch of people all at once out on the street. So I stay tuned on that, but that's my view.
Right. And in terms of these potential, economic, this is an economic issue, but, I guess that's more so like a personal livelihood issue, family livelihood issue as well. But in terms of these economic issues that are going to come up, I've seen that the city's been very proactive in setting up, different task forces and advisory bodies to kind of guide the city through the economic recovery. And the city's already started doing some excellent work. What's your message to some of the small business owners and some of our viewership? So the Bangladeshi Canadian community has, as you know, a long stretch of businesses on the Danforth in Banglatown, or businesses across Southwest Scarborough. How can some of these people get involved with these bodies or give their input in terms of, what they'd like to see or the challenges that they're facing?
Well, first of all, if there's a group, and this is best done by 2 or 3 senior representatives of the Bangla business community coming forward from the Banglatown. And I know they're great entrepreneurs and they're people who worked hard to establish those businesses. And if 2 or 3 of the senior representatives want to come forward, I'd be happy to put them in touch with the man, Mr. Saad Rafi, put in charge of the recovery, because I think he should hear of their particular concerns from the Danforth and elsewhere. Secondly, a person I know has been deeply interested in this and who the community knows well, and they should stay in touch with him, and I'll tell him I was on this broadcast if he doesn't know, is Councillor Brad Bradford. He is the representative of a big part of the Bengali community, not all of it, but a big part of it. And I think he's got a keen interest in the fate of small business coming out of the pandemic. And so I'll make sure he knows that maybe if he hasn't already, he would sit down with some of the leadership of the Banglatown business community. But I think the key things the municipal government is going to be able to do is to make sure that, for example, we're working very hard on an initiative that would happen sometime when we're in the clear, when we're really in the period of recovery, where we have a big campaign to have people dine and shop local, so that we get people specifically for a couple of weeks. It's like some people might know that Winterlicious or Summerlicious, you put on a special deal, we'll advertise it and make people come. And so what we would do is have a big campaign that would encourage people to dine local and shop local. So we'd say, go to Banglatown and buy things, and we would promote it. We would help with, whether it's with street closures or with other kinds of things we would do with the BIAs to make sure that it was well promoted and people patronized it. So we've got initiatives in mind like that. We're doing a lot to get businesses online so they can start to sell things online to people even during the time when they can't open their doors as easily. But we want to hear what ideas are. I mean, the only thing I have said we can't do, and I'm sorry, I wish I could say we just are going to not collect taxes. We have deferred the taxes, but I haven't been able to say, only because the city itself has fallen $1 billion short on what we need to run the city, because, for example, we've lost $500 million in revenue from the transit system because people aren't riding the transit, so they're not paying. And so when you're 500 million short just for that, you can't afford to be saying, well, sure, people can just not pay their taxes for a couple of months. I'd love to be able to say that, but we can't afford it. So we're going to try and find other things we can do, though, such as the digital Main Street thing, where we will for free, and the Shop Here programs, we will for free, and any of the businesses out there watching this TV broadcast can apply to this program and for free have somebody come and set up an online store for them. And they will then be in a whole new world where they can sell their services on the internet around the world, as opposed to just relying on the people to come in Baglatown and do it. So I would love to hear the ideas of the Bengali business community, and I will speak to Councillor Bradford and make sure that we have an opportunity for them to be heard in terms of what we can do to help them with a strong recovery.
Great. Great. And as we move towards the reopening, and we're getting close to the end of our show here, I want to ask you, you've been looking after us and you and the city councilors trying to figure out how we're going to get the city reopened. But once things do reopen, what's the thing you're looking forward to the most?
If it's the thing is that I'm looking forward to in the recovery the most, I just, again, you broke up a little bit at the end, if that's the question. For me, it is just about the life in the city. I mean, it's very dispiriting to drive along Danforth and not see anybody on the sidewalk and not see any cars. I mean, as much as we groan about traffic, and sometimes we'll even groan about congestion on the sidewalk, it's alive because there are restaurants, and because there are shops, and because there are bars, and because there are little comedy theaters and things like that. And I'm looking forward to just having a normal walk down one of those streets and seeing life as much back to normal as it can be, because that's in the interest of the good health of our neighborhoods as well. The neighborhoods thrive on people going to the local shops and buying things and being out and seeing each other and going to get coffee or whatever. And I think when that's missing, a lot of the community spirit is missing. And so, especially at this time of year, in the winter, maybe not so much. People are staying inside a bit more, but in the summer, people just love to be outside. I think it gives them a good feeling to be outside. It builds a feeling of community because we're all out there together. And so I'm just looking forward to that being back. And I'm looking forward to people being able to be back at work. I know how hard it's been on people to be home from work, to be out of work in some cases, to be home with the kids who are getting restless as well. I don't think they're going to go back to school this year, but at least some of the parents can get back to work. The school kids can look forward to going back to school in September. But I just want life to return to normal, as I think everybody does. But we can't do it too fast. We've got to do it, when we think we have really defeated this virus, so that there's no chance of it coming back and having us close down the city again, because that would be a disaster. So I'm looking forward to street life and sidewalk life and work life all coming back, the playgrounds being open, kids being able to go to the park, people able to walk along without having to worry if they're 2 meters away from the people next to them on the sidewalk as much. I think we're in for having to worry about that for some time, but I don't think we'll have to be as worried as we are today. And today we should be worried. So my last message would be to people, please remember to keep your distance from other people, whether you're at the park, on the transit, on the sidewalk, at a store. Please keep your distance from other people, the 2 meters for now. If we do that, and if we are careful about washing our hands and all those kinds of things, this will be over before too long. We're closer to the end of this than to the beginning, and I guess that's got to be seen as good news.
That is good news. That is good news. And I just want to end off asking you for one final message, because you've been, a lot of us in the community have had the pleasure of having you join us at Dentonia Park for the Eid prayers. Obviously, this year Eid is going to be a little different. And I just want to ask you, with Eid just about a week away now, do you have a message for our viewers?
Well, my principal message is, of course, Eid Mubarak. I hope people can celebrate Eid and recognize that it is going to be different this year. A lot of things are different. How people work is different. Kids home from school is different. And so Eid is going to be different, as Ramadan has been. But it doesn't take away from the joy of Eid and all that it represents. I've taken such pleasure for years in going not only to Dentonia Park and seeing this huge group of people praying in the park, which I think is a wonderful thing. Again, it's like the call to prayer. I mean, it's something that's happening in a public park in the center of downtown or downtown East Toronto. And I'm so proud of that we can do that. And I'm sure there are people who walk by on the sidewalk who are not Muslim, but who are happy, just as Muslims are happy when Christians celebrate Christmas or when Jewish people celebrate Passover. They're happy that their fellow Muslim Torontonians are celebrating one of the most important holidays on their calendar. And so I'd say, let's not get worried about the fact that that big event down at the exhibition that I've been to many times with all the rides for the kids and so on, let's not get worried about the fact that's not happening this year. It's no different than something being rained out. You know, we don't go into a total funk about that. We say, so it rained, we'll do it again another time. And the big Eid celebrations in Dentonia Park or in the exhibition, they will happen again. This year, let's do something special with family and have a really special Eid with family. My guess is, and you would know better than I because I'm not Muslim, my guess is back in the days, way back when Eid began to be celebrated, it was very much a family thing and that people celebrated with their own family. And gradually over time, we've taken to celebrating things with our friends and neighbors and family, which is great. But this year, we'll just have to do it with a smaller group, and it can be just as happy and just as special, maybe very special because it won't necessarily happen again this way. But have Eid Mubarak anyway. And I will look forward to virtually celebrating with you because I know there'll be some virtual Eid celebrations. And just as with Ramadan, where I've been to quite a few iftar, virtual iftar broadcasts online, I will be there for Eid as well to celebrate with you because you're a wonderful community of contributing citizens who are very generous people that look after not only themselves, but look after other Torontonians. You are making huge contributions to the professions, to business, to the cultural life of the city, the food life of the city. I could go on. And I just want to say thank you for that. I stand with you in the fight against discrimination and Islamophobia, but most of all, I stand with you in making sure that we come back from this pandemic strong and united and having helped each other through it. And I know you're doing that, and I hope that I've tried to help as well just by answering some questions and trying to do my best at City Hall. So thank you very much for having me on, and Eid Mubarak again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Tory. Keep up the amazing work, and thank you for joining us on DesheBideshe TV, the first Bengali television channel in Canada. Thank you again for your time.
Sarwar?
Ji.
তো কি অবস্থা কি আমরা কি ওনার কাছ থেকে কি শুনলাম একটু আমাদের বাংলাভাষী যারা দর্শক আছেন
জি
তারা যাতে একটু বুঝতে পারেন
হ্যাঁ আমাদের মেয়র আজকে কয়েকটা ব্যাপার নিয়ে কথা বললেন আমি শুরু করব বিগিনিং এ ওনার যে একটা পজিটিভ মেসেজ যে আমরা পাইলাম এই যে আজানের বিষয়টা নিয়ে যেহেতু আমাদের কমিউনিটি আর পুরো মুসলিম কমিউনিটিতে অ্যাবাউট লাস্ট 1.5 weeks থেকে 2 weeks ধরে একটা ইস্যু চলতেছে যে কোনো খুব আইসোলেটেড একটা স্মল গ্রুপ অফ পিপল আজানের ইস্যুটা নিয়ে একটু কন্ট্রোভার্সি ক্রিয়েট করতেছে
আমি এখানে বলে রাখি সার্ভার যে আজানটা তো বাংলাদেশি মুসলিমদের জন্য শুধু না
এক্স্যাক্টলি
এখানে অন্তত পক্ষে 70-80টা দেশের মুসলমান বা আরো তার চেয়ে আরো বেশি দেশের মুসলমানরা আছে এখানে
এক্স্যাক্টলি
সেখানে তো এটা শুধুমাত্র আমাদের কোনো ইস্যু না এটা সমগ্র মুসলমান সম্প্রদায়ের বিষয় এবং ওইটার প্রতি রেসপেক্ট দেখিয়ে টরন্টোর বা অন্যান্য আরো কিছু সিটিতে তারা আজানের পারমিশন দিয়েছেন
জি
আমরা তাদেরকে অভিনন্দন জানাই
এক্স্যাক্টলি আর মেয়র যেটা আমাদেরকে খুব সুন্দর করে বললেন যে এই যে ইসলামোফোবিয়ার কোনো জায়গা নাই এই সিটিতে কেউ যে কোনো ইসলামিক ধর্ম হোক অথবা যে কোনো ধর্ম হোক যে কোনো কালচার হোক এইটাকে কোনোভাবে কোনো একটা কালচারের বিরুদ্ধে রিলিজনের বিরুদ্ধে ডিসক্রিমিনেশনের কোনো জায়গা নাই এই সিটিতে আর খুব সুন্দর করে মেয়র বললেন যে আজান হোক অথবা আমাদের ঈদের জামাত হোক অথবা ক্রিসমাস অথবা পাস ওভার যে সেলিব্রেশনই হোক এগুলা জিনিস আমাদের সিটিকে আরো সুন্দর করে আমাদের কাছে
জেনারেল বক্তব্য কিন্তু আমি যেটা মনে করি আমাদের বাঙালি আমরা হিন্দু বৌদ্ধ খ্রিস্টান মুসলমান আমাদের হাজার বছরের ঐতিহ্য আছে আমরা একসাথে থাকি আমরা একসাথে খাই আমরা আমাদের মধ্যে সাম্প্রদায়িকতার কোনো জায়গা কখনো ছিল না যে কারণে আমরা অসাম্প্রদায়িক চেতনা থেকেই আমরা বাংলাদেশ স্বাধীন করি এবং সেভাবেই আমরা টিকে আছি তাই বলে 2-4 জন যে এদিক ওদিক নাই তা না এটা সবসময় ছিল এবং এখনো থাকবে এটাকে মেনে নিয়ে আমরা পাশাপাশি থাকবো একে অন্যের সাথে আমরা বন্ধুত্বের হাত বাড়াবো আচ্ছা, আর যে বিষয়টা নিয়ে মেয়র বললেন, উনি লকডাউনটা ওপেন করার ব্যাপারে কি বলেছেন?
উনি বললেন আমরা স্টেজ 1 আস্তে আস্তে শুরু হচ্ছে। উনি ফিল করেন যে আমরা রাইট ট্র্যাকে আছি, আমরা হেলথ এক্সপার্টদের পাবলিক হেলথ অফিসিয়ালদের ডিসিশন গুলা মেনেই আমরা চলতেছি। আর উনি বললেন যে স্টেজ 1 থেকে স্টেজ 2টা হবে একটা বিগার রিওপেনিং, ওইখানে হবে আরো বিগার অফিস, এরপরে আরো বিগার বিজনেসরা ওই সময় রিওপেন করবে। উনাকে একটা কোয়েশ্চেন আমরা করছিলাম যে এই সময় কি মাস্ক পরা, পাবলিকে মাস্ক পরাটা কি ম্যান্ডেটরি করে দেওয়া হবে কিনা। উনি বলছেন যে এটা হয়তো টরন্টোর মতো সিটিতে এরকম কোনো অর্ডার ইস্যু করা হবে না, যেহেতু আমাদের সিটিতে জেনারেলি লোকজন বুঝে সুঝেই চলে ইন জেনারেল, আর এটার জন্য আমাদের টাইপ অফ সোসাইটিতে এই জিনিসটা হয়তো অর্ডারটা ইস্যু করার দরকার হবে না। কিন্তু উনি এটাই বললেন যে আমরা স্টেজ বাই স্টেজ রিওপেনিংটা নিয়ে আমরা প্রসিড করব। আর আমরা স্টেজ 1 থেকে 2 তে যাওয়ার আগে, 2 থেকে 3 তে যাওয়ার আগে আমরা ওই জিনিসটা দেখবো যে সিচুয়েশনটা ইমপ্রুভমেন্টের দিকে যাচ্ছে না সিচুয়েশন আরো খারাপের দিকে যাচ্ছে।
একটা জিনিস আমরা মনে হয় এবছর আমরা কোনো পিকনিক করতে পারবো না পার্কে।
জি জি, এটাই
দুঃখজনক। আমরা রোজার কোনো ইফতার পার্টি করতে পারলাম না, ঈদ সেলিব্রেশনটা ওইভাবে আমরা করতে পারলাম না, তারপরে এবারে পিকনিকও হবে না। আর কবে যে আমরা একসাথে হব আমি ঠিক ধারণার বাইরে, অপেক্ষা করা ছাড়া আমাদের উপায় নেই। তবে সবার প্রতি আমাদের এই অনুরোধ থাকবে যে আপনারা ঘরে থাকবেন এবং ঘরে থেকে যতটুকু অ্যাক্টিভিটিস আপনারা প্রার্থনা বলুন, আপনাদের সোশ্যাল অ্যাক্টিভিটিস বলুন, আপনারা সেটা চালিয়ে যাবেন।
জি জি, এক্স্যাক্টলি এই জিনিসটাই। আমরা তো এখন আমাদের সবাইরই একটা কমন গোল, বাংলাদেশি এবং নন বাংলাদেশি সবাইরই একটা ইচ্ছা যে আমরা কোন রকম এই প্যান্ডেমিকটা আমরা ওভারকাম করে, এই ভাইরাসটাকে আমরা ডিফিট করে আমরা যাতে ফিরে যেতে পারি আমাদের নর্মাল লাইফস্টাইল। আমরা যাতে এক একজনকে দেখে আবার এভেন্চুয়ালি এক সময় আমরা যাতে আবার হ্যান্ডশেক যাতে করতে পারি। এইগুলা জিনিসের জন্য সময় লাগবে ডেফিনেটলি, কতদিন লাগবে এইটাও কেউ জানে না। কিন্তু আমরা যতটুকু আমরা বাসায় থাকি, যতটুকু আমরা সোশ্যাল ডিস্টেন্সিং মেনটেন করি, ও আমাদের সিচুয়েশনটা ইমপ্রুভ হতে থাকবে। ওই জিনিসটাই আমরা এখন পর্যন্ত জানি, আর আমরা আমাদের পাবলিক হেলথ অফিসিয়ালদের গাইডেন্সটাই ফলো করা, ওইটাই আমাদের জন্য সবচেয়ে ভালো কাজ হবে। আমাদের প্রাইম মিনিস্টারও এই আউটব্রেকের বিগিনিং এ উনি খুব ক্লিয়ারলি বলছেন যে the best way to serve right now is by staying home. এখন আমরা বাসায় থেকে আমরা আমাদের দেশকে আমরা এই সময় সার্ভ করতেছি।
ধন্যবাদ সারওয়ার। আমরা আজকে আমাদের মূলধারার রাজনীতিবিদ, বিশেষ করে যে আমাদের নগরীর মেয়রকে আমরা আমাদের স্টুডিওতে আনতে পেরেছি। আমি মনে করি যে এটা একটা বিশাল ব্যাপার, এবং এই জন টরিকে দিয়ে আমাদের যাত্রা হলো শুরু। আমরা এখন থেকে প্রতি সপ্তাহে আমরা একজন করে মূলধারার, অন্ততপক্ষে একজন, চেষ্টা করবো 2 জন, কারণ অনেক বড় দেশ, আমরা আনবো এবং তাদের সাথে আমরা শেয়ার করব আমাদের সুখ দুঃখগুলো, এবং তাদের যে বার্তা আছে সেটা আমরা পৌঁছে দেব আমাদের কমিউনিটির কাছে। জি, আবার ধন্যবাদ সারওয়ার। জি,
thank you. I want to say thank you to DesheBideshe TV for giving us this opportunity, and also setting up a platform where we can connect with the mainstream, with the politicians of this country, our elected officials, and have them come and engage with the public from our community. So thank you to yourself and DesheBideshe TV.
Thank you, sir. প্রিয় দর্শক, এই ছিল আজকের বিশেষ অনুষ্ঠান। অতিথি ছিলেন টরন্টোর মেয়র জন টরি, সাক্ষাৎকার নিয়েছেন সারওয়ার চৌধুরী।